hold on one second.
We have an administrator that sets out policy updates every now and again, and I always ignore them until it gets to the point where it says your PC will restart in 10 minutes, and at that point I'm desperately saving as much as I possibly can and shutting down all the programs that I've had open for the last 6 months or whatever.
It's a mad dash. I totally agree.
Yep. Okay. So I started out with the Skype Translator project when we started to take it publicly. And I sit in Skype, and there are two components to Skype Translator. There is the Microsoft research team who sit in Redmond, and then they have people around the world who get involved, but they sit very much in the R&D sort of team. That is sort of Microsoft research. And then for us to bring it to market, we've put it into a product, and that product, when it works very well, is Skype, obviously. And so the longer term picture is unclear. We haven't announced that, but there will be more languages and more. It will be available on more platforms. Where we are at the moment is we've released, as you know, Spanish to English, English, Spanish.
Sure.
And what we have to do is internally we reach a sort of a quality bar, and then we feel that we're in a position to be able to let a few other people try it. And in doing so, a couple of things happen. Firstly, we learn a lot about how people pronounce the different dialects, the way people construct sentences, and all that is sort of picked up and used. The other thing that we need to do is scale our infrastructure. So when we started this, we had no idea how many people would sign up and start using it on day one. Right. So we sort of throttled it, and we said, right, look, we're going to do it with one language, and then we'll send out invites, as we do it, and we'll do it in batches of, 5,000, I think it was at the moment, and then we ramped it up. We've got well over 100,000 people now registered across all the languages, and so we're in a nice place. We're getting, we've got people ready for new languages as we release them, and then we're starting to take the data that people have with their calls, and we then put it through. There are a number of different components to the sort of how the speech translator works, but how it learns, and then it sort of corrects itself and it gets better. So your question about sort of particularly very specific things like place names or very unique words that people may use in a specific scenario, they will eventually get much better. Now, some of course don't have a translation. The other thing we found, and so I was in Mexico when we filmed the Tacoma, Mexico school, and we were aware of this, but we weren't sure how it would impact the sort of the use. That very young voices are obviously at a different frequency to adult voices, and most of our work, particularly in Spanish, had been on more adult voices. So both characters actually had never used Skype Translator at all, and we literally put them on it and we tried it straight away. And everybody needs about 20 minutes to get used to it, because you have this. This delay, basically, that you say something and then it's translated, and you can hear it being translated, and then you wait for the other person to come, and it takes you about 20 minutes to get used to that. Now, actually, we're looking at, do we turn off the option of you hearing yourself being translated, and then it makes a more natural flow of the conversation, or do we? Some people, for example, may just wish to have the text, because if they're in very noisy environments, or they may want to just read it. So we're looking at various different options as to what's the best way of making this a smooth process.
Right, so it's more fluent.
And there are other things that are also in progress that'll come out. There's an update coming fairly soon that you'll see immediately some changes, and that actually causes more confusion if you've got everything switched on. So we're trying different things, and it's fascinating doing that. But younger voices, we've had less experience of. So the first thing I'd say to you is, some children have a deeper voice than other children. I mean, that's not entirely true, but there are some children who really they don't pick up very well. And so, those are people you probably have to weed out you'll see quite quickly that the translator just for some reason does not, whether it's the frequency of their voice or something, we struggle with that. And particularly on the first iteration. Now, the funny thing is that as we announce or as we come out with other languages, what we've found is that as we've been, as you know, we showed it in German very early on.
Sure.
Yeah. We've also had a couple of other languages going internally. What we found is that internally testing these other languages has actually also improved Spanish. And so there are some similarities. As this starts to scale out, there is broader benefit for other languages. So hopefully, relatively quickly, as we get more languages goes on, then even faster the sort of it gets better. But there are a couple of practical things that I notice particularly in your YouTube video. You used a headset, which is brilliant, but it's very difficult talking into a laptop PC. Yes. The microphones are very poor, and often you think you're in a quiet environment, and actually there's quite a lot of noise. In an office, there's air conditioning, there's bangs and stuff like that.
And what we did also, we had a live video feed on that side as well, so you could see their space and how they were doing it. And there was a lot of background noise. If you've been to one of those countries where there's horns and there's chicken.
Yeah.
So we knew that as well, that the quality on his side. And I specifically was looking at his eyes when he was listening. It was clear that he wasn't getting everything, but I agree with you on that in terms of like the need for a headset on both sides.
Yeah.
And kids by nature talk very fast. So,
yes.
And this is another thing too that we realized pretty quickly. And I was looking at the live video feed offline. I was kind of looking at it. I could clearly see that he was talking Spanish obviously, but it was very fast, and that was a challenge in some respects when you couple that with the hardware issues as far as bandwidth. Which leads me to my next question in terms of like the technical infrastructure, in terms of what did you see was the optimal setting as far as I don't need to know the magic number as far as, but obviously bandwidth is a factor when it comes to facilitating a conversation using Skype.
It is. You're absolutely right. And we tried, so when we were initially looking, one of the things we said is that we do need reasonably good bandwidth. We're not sure how much it's going to take at the moment in order for it to work properly, but
right.
You've got to start off with something reasonable. We were in a lucky position that I actually started a relationship with the teacher, so yes. I had a conversation with her, and just on normal Skype without using translator. Sure. And at the moment you have video on, you can start to tell if you've got a good connection or not. So we worked on the premise that, look, if you could do a video conversation, then the chances are you could do a Skype translator conversation without too many problems as well. So, as a ballpark, that's what we did. Then we became a little more technical about it, and we said, right, could you let us have your, upload, download speeds? Sure. And I think, and I don't have them. I regret. Really, for us to be able to sort of start accumulating a bit of data, but the way that the Skype translator works is you're really it's not so all calls are one-to-one. It's rather like now I'm calling you, you're calling me, but in reality what's happening is it's going out to the Skype translator bot that is then calling you, and the bot does all the translation. So it's a bit of a three-way call. So that internet connection needs to be good all three ways. So from me to the bot to you, and then back to the and then back again. Now all the translation I think is done in I want to say, well, actually I don't know where it's all done, but it's done on the sort of the Skype infrastructure. So I think provided you've got a good bandwidth out of wherever the country is, the chances are that certainly on your end you should have reasonable infrastructure within the US. The other thing I think that two other things I think. One is using a microphone and headset not only does it have a better pickup of the voice, and so there's no background noise. It just picks up the voice, provided it's, you're not spitting into the microphone.
Right.
But putting a headset onto a child helps them also focus, because then they're not listening to all their colleagues and people, or children around them. So it does cut out a bit of the noise. Where we did the sort of class, we used it actually in a scenario that's not in the film, but we used it for something called Skype in the Classroom, which is it's basically a game where one school has to guess where the other school is, and they're not allowed to, basically their only answers are yes or no. So you ask a question and then they sort of respond with a yes or no. Now that's not very interesting from a sort of, how does the translation works. So that's how you see the call start. But then we actually morphed into a more of a personal conversation.
Sure.
But when we were doing the sort of having the whole class get involved, what we did is we had one person who was asking the questions.
Right.
And so we basically let them get used to it, so they understood that they had to pause, and they were the sort of the spokesperson for that class. So everybody came to them. And then the way we set it up was we had the speakers in the classroom hear, so everybody could hear it.
Right.
And also it went through the headset.
Right.
Now we did that with a bit of with a little black magic box, but when I've done that for test purposes, actually what you end up doing is just fiddling. Certainly on a PC, you can choose which sound output you want, so which speakers you want. So in that case, you can't put it through the headset, but then the whole class hears the answer, and that's where you get the amazement, because these people hear somebody speaking in Spanish, and then suddenly they hear the English translation, and the children just are completely blown away by that. So the setting up, the setup facilitates how easy it is to sort of make it work, but you can't have an open microphone with everybody trying to shout into it.
Sure.
The other thing I found actually is having a little button on your headset, so you can go to mute every now and again, rather than mute on the PC, because it's faster just to hold a button and press it. Because sometimes you want to be able to have a conversation with somebody without Skype Translator translating it, otherwise it becomes really tedious.
Right. And what we found also is with our internal tests, for those who are bilingual, they actually struggled because they would actually hear the translation, and especially if it was really off. It's actually easier if you're not bilingual in that sense, because you're really not sure what it. But when you start questioning it, and we knew that was going to happen too, so we had to test it with both bilingual as well as those that.
And actually, bilingual also. People, they tend to answer faster, so they've heard the question, so they respond straight away, and they jump the translation.
I think the overlaps,
Yes. The other thing that we've done is where you get an odd sentence, we try and encourage people to say, can you say that again? And often Skype Translator will retranslate the same sentence more correctly.
Sure.
That's not the right word. Yes, better.
Yes.
So that sort of helps as well. So you can say to the machine, look, sorry, say that again. And so then the person, repeats their sentence, and it does tend to get better. It falls over on strange names.
Right.
We laughed because we were in a place, I can't remember the name of it, and we kept saying, there were two scenarios. One which was it came out very funny, but we kept talking about, you're talking to Seattle. So the schoolgirl started pronouncing it as Seattle. And of course, the Spanish translation of Seattle is not Seattle. It's Seattle or something like that. So therefore, it just translated it wrong anyway. So, we were setting it up for mistakes.
Right.
And
we did that also. We intentionally dropped some, there was one reference where we, referenced the coffee, and that was one that we did, where it did pick it up in the right context, which I thought was interesting.
Yes, that's right. I saw that. Yes, I saw that. That was.
It got it in the right context, which I thought was.
Yes, I saw that in your text. What was the word that you used?
Crap. It was.
That's right. Yeah, and it comes out as this is a piece of shit or whatever. Yes, that's right. Mierda. Yes.
It was correct. It was.
Yeah. There's a profanity filter within Skype Translator.
Right.
So, and if you're working with children, I recommend you have it turned on.
Yes. I totally.
So that was there was something else I was going to tell you about. So the frequency of the voice is using a headset.
And I have another.
Yes, go on.
Um, we were also contemplating the use of video messages. As you know, the original, the basic desktop version supports the ability to send a video message.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't sure if that would be available within the Skype Translator application. Meaning, if I want to send a video, this is really complicated, but send a video and have it sent in a translated state. Is that possible, or?
Not at the moment.
Yes.
That would not. I mean, that would be.
So now we're taking away from a direct two-way exchange and rather
Yeah.
something that can be sent basically as a video message.
Yes, I mean, there's no reason not to be able to do it, because the translation is done, and what you're doing is actually using the same infrastructure as a video message at the moment.
Right.
I think we would look at whether that was something people wanted.
Right.
So I think that will be something that we would announce. If we felt there was a need for it, then I think we put it into the product now to try it.
Right.
I'll flag that, actually. It's an interesting question.
Well, here's a scenario. We have some sponsors and donors that may not have the time. And also, you got to keep in mind that we're dealing, across, different time zones. So for a sponsor who wants to, let's say, leave a message for his sponsored child and have it go through the translating engine, that's what I call it, it would allow them to do that in a way that they wouldn't have to have a real-time exchange. And plus, they wouldn't have to coordinate it on the other side of the world with that agency. So that would be the equivalent to like a videogram, basically, sending a translated video message. Now, also keep in mind that you're dealing with the engine itself that may or may not get it exactly right. And we've come to just accept, the word beta is a beautiful word because it just means that it's in development, it's just testing. And I live around the word beta. I use that maybe about 3 to 5 times a day, but that's what it means. That's what it means. You have to be more forgiving. You have to just accept it, and it's not going to be perfect. But if there's a way they can capture it in a 2-minute message or even a minute message, that may be something of value.
I don't know whether we'll do it, but that's good feedback, and I will pass that on to the team and see where we want to go with that. But from an infrastructure point of view, it's not that difficult, and we should be able to even allow you to listen to your translated message if you knew what it was before you actually even sent it. That might be a little more complicated because what you could easily basically go to the translator bot, say, I want you to translate this and send it to so-and-so, and then it puts it up onto the server. So if somebody's offline, it just waits for the person to come online, and there it is. Right.
And I guess, and eventually, all this will be rolled into the full version of Skype, the actual application itself.
Yes, I mean, that's something that we, what the business model is we're still, working on. So there are different things there. What was the other thing? Sorry, I made a list. Bandwidth, children.
Right down here.
There was something. I went through your video. I wrote. So I've come into a little room to actually have the chat, and I left my notebook behind.
And I like the idea of having the designated speaker. If you have a group setting, I'm writing that down now. Is to have a designated. I'm calling it just a designated speaker or someone that's out there. But I like your approach too. If you're able to at least have everyone in the classroom hear what was going on. So having the speakers.
Yes, it also means they get a bit of experience. They know, that they have to slow down. That was it. We found. With adults, it's very easy to say slow down and they get it. One of the things that we did in the early days is that it became quite natural to sort of raise your finger to sort of, you'd finish speaking and you'd almost raise your finger to sort of say, well, wait. And actually that was in your video, I think, as well.
I would like it if, I was thinking, we had hand signals of stopping.
Yes.
And I was thinking red light, green light, because kids by nature are going to talk relatively fast. And it's gonna be, they're not going to stop and wait. So.
Well, that was the problem we found with the children, in that you could tell them to wait and they were good for 5 seconds, but then the next time the conversation came, they'd speed up again. So I was there sort of waving my hand up and down going, slow down, slow down. But it was, the children are much harder because that's maybe, particularly when you've got cameras there as well, they get a little bit nervous about it. And so they do gabble. And I think if I was to do children again, what I would do is actually put them in front of a camera and see how they responded, because filming them actually is much more telling than just asking them to do it, because you see children react very differently.
Right. Right.
And I think that was one of the harder things for us in working with the children, is not only was the frequency of the voice difficult for some children, but they were harder to sort of give hand signals to sort of, manage as you're actually filming this.
Right. Right. Yeah. And like I said in the beginning of the call, one thing we're testing is the use of video, and we found that just, positioning a tablet even and putting it on the table and letting the kids just talk, they were more fascinated about what was going on in the whole process. So kids were a lot more comfortable, a lot more natural when it wasn't. It was less of an interrogation and more of just letting kids be kids, and that was important for us.
I mean, if it's a whole class, and we haven't done this, but the critical bit really is making sure you pick up the voice of the one person you want to have. But what you could do is have a standalone microphone which is very directional and just picks up close sound.
Right.
So, and they're not, you can get some quite good ones now which are very
the unidirectional mics.
Yeah. And basically, you basically have one microphone that is in the classroom that one person comes up to and speaks to.
Sure.
But that means the whole class has to sort of go through some form of, I want to use it and understand that, because what a lot of them will do is ask a question and then run away. So for that point of view, it sort of works very well. Certainly the younger children, in another class we did, they would come up, they would gabble their question and then literally run away without even wanting to hear the answer. But that is a scenario you could try, because the sound is then picked up from the voice,
right,
which is the most important thing. It reduces the background noise tremendously, so it gets a clear sentence. And the other thing I meant to say about Skype Translator is that actually it's very good at setting context, and the longer the sentence, the better the translation. Right. And so at 3 or 4 words, sometimes it doesn't understand the context, so it doesn't use the right words, whereas a longer sentence works very well. And there's a wonderful video I did with CNN with Richard Quest, where he talks, he's deliberately tries to catch it out, and he says, so in the European economic environment, with the stock exchange doing this and something else doing that and the monetary fund doing this, and he goes on for about 30 or 40 seconds with all these long words, and the translation is perfect, and you see his face at the end of it. He goes, wow, and that was very telling, because the longer the sentence, the more context it gets, and so therefore it's able to translate better.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that's about all I can help you with at the moment.
James, you've been wonderful. I really mean it. This is great, and I appreciate your time on this. And as we move further into our testing and looking at the application, I look forward to the next beta release, but it's like, as we move forward into this process, I'll certainly reach out to you if you have any questions. If I have any questions.
Yes, please do, and I'd love to stay in touch to see how you're doing things.
Yes.
And do let me know. We're looking for feedback. There's a whole group of us who sort of are interested in stuff that you're doing, and if you find stuff that's going really wrong, please, I will get somebody who's much more technically minded to come and talk to you, and so we can try and sort it out. But we're grateful that you try. It's absolutely brilliant. One of the things,
and we're early adopters to the whole process. I mean, the minute I saw it on the radar, I immediately had the headset on and I dropped everything on. So that's the person I'm wired for, so.
Well, the one thing you're probably frustrated about is the length of time it takes to connect the call.
Yeah.
So that's something that we're working on tremendously at the moment, and hopefully that will be dramatically reduced. And then there's some new stuff that hopefully you'll be amused by. So maybe after we've put the release out, I'll ping you and see how it goes.
That's wonderful.
Okay. Well, let me know if there's anything else I can do, but I'd love to stay in touch.
Absolutely.
And if you find anything odd or something particularly brilliant, please let us know.
I will. Definitely.
Thank you.
James, thank you so much. I really mean
No, it's a